Jean-Christophe, we're 2 meters apart, but it's so good to see you in the flesh. Thanks very much for seeing us.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming to Geneva, the first ever Geneva Watch Days.
Geneva Watch Days, indeed. I want to talk through, let's get real. Like 2020, it's been a bad year.
It's been a bad year, yes and no. Bad because for several months we have been 100% closed in most of the countries, so we just couldn't sell. So obviously we lost a lot of sales during the first part of the year. But a good year on the other end, because COVID has accelerated a lot of projects, a lot of initiatives that we wanted really to implement. From corporate social responsibility to new watch collection, really in tune with times, and eventually a new way of working as well, much more digital than ever before. So like in any crisis and drama, you have obviously the sad negative. So many people died from COVID, economical activity stopped, but on the other end, you have a positive side, the learning, which if you're an agile company, you implement immediately.
So talk me through, the inception around Geneva Watch Days.
Well, when I learned that because of COVID, obviously Basel World and Watch and Wonders would be cancelled, I immediately reacted asking them, but do you plan to do it later in the year? And they told me very surprisingly, not at all. And so I realized that between the last fair, which was in March 19, and the next one, which would be in April 21, there would be more than 24 months. And really, I was very concerned that we would really screw up the whole 2020 and not only the first part of the year. And immediately, I wondered, can we organize a fair ourselves, as we did in Dubai with the LVMH brands in January? Sure, and the answer was yes. So I contacted them, but they were not so keen because they prefer for the second part of the year do road shows. So I said, okay, fine. So I said, if we cannot do it together, I fully understand. I mean, each brand is free. Let's call the other brands. So I called some friend of mine, I've been 20 years in the industry, and very quickly, just in a weekend, we create a kind of core team made of Bulgari, Gerard Perregaux, Lisnada, Breitling, and MBNF. And this was strong enough to attract many other brands to our vision. Our vision was really to reinvent the fair concept, to comply obviously with the COVID restriction, but not only, but eventually be free of Basel World, being free of Watch and Wonders, to do exactly the fair we're doing. So it's a digital fair, the first ever. 50% is physical, 50% is digital. So it's global because we talk to everyone, whether you are in Geneva or not, we talk to everyone. It's a decentralized fair for the first time ever. Instead of being all in the same building, we are in 17 different locations, but it's much better because it complies with COVID, and at the same time, people like to have the nice 5 minutes walk, break, in the open air.
You say that, and obviously, that the feel here is very different to Basel World and Watches of Wonder. But when you went to those show halls, everyone was there. The buzz, the excitement. There was so many watches just there. You could go from one appointment to the next, and you really felt like there was a huge part of this watch community was all really together. And whilst a lot of people are here, how do you feel? Do you feel that there's something missing there, and how do you feel that's going to affect the watch industry? Well,
what I feel is that not having a fair at all is totally wrong. This is why Bulgari initiating that process of recreating a fair from scratch. It's the first time ever. It's organized by the brands directly, and we have 17 brands, so it's less than Basel, it's less than Watch and Wonders, but on the other hand, it's quite representative of the Swiss excellence in luxury watchmaking because it spans from very small new brands to more established pillars, like of Breitling or Bulgari. So quite a great diversity and complementarity. So eventually what matters is not so much how many brands, but how the brands exhibiting together do represent the Swiss watchmaking excellence. I think the 16, 17 we have accomplish that.
What do you think all the brands that aren't here, what do you think they're going to be, they must be sort of closely looking to see what's going on and how much buzz is going on?
Well, I think that a lot of brands which decided not to participate because eventually, I opened the door to everyone. I said, look, we have no restrictions. So whether we are 10, 20 or 50, the more we are, the better we are. Strangely and very conservatively, only, but the number is already pretty high, 17 did follow. And I think that then when the other brand understood that it was not a wishful thinking, but that the dream would come true, they started not to panic because they don't panic, but they started really to be concerned to the point that many brands did decide to organize during the same period, so 26 to 29 August, their own kind of small showroom in the city, in their boutique. We know that the world leader will organize as of Monday the release of the novelties in the manufacturer. So eventually, I'm happy because eventually the vision was right. Sure. And unfortunately, they didn't join the institutional fair we created with the Geneva State, because we are endorsed officially by Geneva State. But they reacted positively, meaning by that understanding our vision, they eventually do the same during or right after. And it's fine for the industry.
And so is this the future? Is this the future of the watch fairs? Like, do you think?
Well, I think that the future of the watch fair is a big question mark, because it cannot be any longer the format we have followed for virtually 1 century. It has to be reinvented. And I think it will be very much the way we have designed the Geneva Watch Days. So as I meant, it's phygital, this is mandatory. It has to be open to the public, this is mandatory, and not only one day with a fee, it has to be open every day. It has to be decentralized. I think that the times are gone when people want to regroup in the same location, especially post-COVID, people will ever be a bit cautious about the big gathering. I think directly managed by the brand, it's much cheaper and much more agile. And at the end of the day, much more cost efficient, because one of the main critiques against the fair was the cost.
But what do you think from a media point of view, I guess, for our point of view, to come to one place and to see?
Definitely. And indeed, you came to Geneva for us because it was a multi-brand fair and not a Bulgari event. So I think that there is a lot of need and of value to be regrouped as a collectivity and not as a single brand, because this is what you want. You want to cover many brands in a short lapse of time. Our retailing partners want to cover many brands in a short lapse of time. So whatever fair will exist, it has to be multi-brand and not mono-brand. And then it has to be also phygital, blah, blah, blah.
And do you think, obviously we're here in Geneva, Basel World happens obviously in Basel. Is moving into the future, do you think Geneva will become more and more and more and more the epicenter of the watchmaking world? Well,
at the end of the day, I think that there is room for one location only, once a year only. It's, with the times, with the further digitalization, you don't need any longer 2 different cities, 2 different periods, and people hate the fact to travel twice. So it will be Geneva, and that's good because Geneva is emblematic of Swiss watchmaking more than any other city in Switzerland. So Geneva is very legitimate. Geneva is hosting a lot of local brands, from the biggest to the smallest. And Geneva has the best hotel infrastructure in Switzerland together with Zurich. So it's ideal. And now, the only question is whether the brands will be all together or not. But to me, it's very academic, because what matters for you, what matters for our retail partners is that we are all in the same city at the same time. And no one cares about whether we are all in Palexpo or some are in Palexpo, others are in the Ritz-Carlton, others are in the boutique. Who matters? Because the city anyhow is small. So anything is at walking distance or 5 minutes cab ride. So that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. You've been a massive spokesman to obviously Geneva Watch Days. You've really sort of backed it. What do you say to, I guess, a lot of other CEOs out there who maybe aren't here or are going through tough times? Like, what would you say?
It's time now for revenge. It's time for coming back. It's time for reassuring clients, for reassuring the final watch lover that the watch industry is back, that the watch industry will excite them, that the watch industry has never been so creative and so relevant. So it's really time, to say, okay, COVID is not behind us, strictly speaking, but that the COVID shock is behind us. And even if we have to cope with COVID for the next 3 years, anyhow, we'll master it and we'll win over it. So let's resume our activities, let's be positive, let's be proactive, let's fight back, and eventually let's try to close that bad year on a positive note, so that in 2021 we'll be confident, and that 2021 will be the year of full recovery.
You're on Zoom calls as well as seeing people in person? How's that playing out?
Basically, I'm meeting over the 3 days with 250 journalists and about 90 clients. And 150 of the journalists are abroad, so via Zoom, and about half of the clients are also via Zoom. So it's not that Zoom replaces 100% the value of a personal one-to-one as we are right now, but on the other hand, if you cannot meet physically, Zoom, especially backed with high-definition video cameras, is providing a superlative glorification of the novelties. When you have to go deep inside the skeleton, tourbillon, chronograph, Zoom does even a better job than the naked eye can really understand. This morning I've been with Hong Kongese, with Chinese, with Japanese. I can tell you they were all overwhelmed, not only by the relevance of our novelties, but by the beauty we manage through high-definition video cameras to showcase them.
2021, we're aiming for full recovery. Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, I think that we should set as a goal to get back to 2019 levels. And it won't be easy because 2019 was a good year for watches. It was not better than 18 or 17, but let's say it was a strong year for most companies. And obviously, the fall this year is huge because year to date, the Swiss watch exports report minus 35 or minus 38, whatever it is. So, and maybe at the end of the year, it will be marginally better, but probably, I don't know, minus 25. So from minus 25 to come back to 100 is not that easy because we have to grow by 32%, which some brands will achieve, for sure, some won't. And so at the end of the day, it's more a brand competitiveness and attractiveness game than an industry game. But obviously, the more we'll play it as a part of a collectivity, the easier it will be. I think that brands we want to do everything alone will have tremendous difficulties.
But do you think there are some brands, you talk about that 32% or 30% down. Do you think there's a real danger or risk that some brands will have to, I don't know, dare I say, close or?
Well, actually, I'm more concerned somehow by our suppliers because our suppliers are much smaller companies usually, and or family-owned very often, and so their financial backing is somehow limited, and the banks often are a bit reluctant, to go far. So our first priority as Bulgari has been really to support our suppliers in watches, in jewelry, to avoid, that they go Chapter 11 and make sure that, their excellence will survive the crisis because it's an excellence they developed over 1 century that we cannot replace overnight. So, and I think a lot of Swiss brands have behaved exactly the same way. So we have taken some of the unemployment burden on our shoulders to make sure that we left some working hours on the side. Also because, Bulgari is a big company, so obviously we are suffering from COVID a lot. But sales decline doesn't mean necessarily that we lose all profits. We manage by savings. Obviously, it will be less than last year. However, it will be profitable. So I think it's a duty, a mission to play also collectively to the benefit of the world industry and not only selfishly to maximize our profit this year.
Well, Jean-Christophe, you've answered so many questions, which you've left me really with a lot to think about. So, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for us to be able to see have some watches on our wrists. It's great to see you, and thank you.
Thanks to you, because without you being in Geneva, without the retailers being in Geneva, this wouldn't have been possible. So you made it possible, and obviously without the physical platform, the digital platform would have been much weaker.
True.